Hello, everybody. I am Florencia Velasco Fortner, President and CEO of the Concilio. Thank you for attending this breakout session. Today, we are going to increase your Hispanic and Latino cultural IQ. So I want to start off by sharing a little bit about the Concilio. We have been helping Latinos and other diverse families unlock their potential since 1981. We provide culturally relevant parent engagement programming, and we partner with North Texas organizations on grassroots engagement of Hispanics and Latinos. I have been with the Concilio since 2005, but my experience with the Latino community started long before then. My parents were Mexican immigrants who moved to the United States when I was 6. They encouraged me to graduate from high school and then college. From there, I became a community organizer and worked for gang prevention programs in Los Angeles County. Later, I helped diffuse cultural clashes in Orange County's affordable housing communities. What I learned from all these experiences, where I was often interacting with different racial and ethnic groups, was the importance of cultural competency. This is something that I've even had to learn in my personal life. As the wife of an African-American pastor, cultural competency is a topic that I am passionate about, and I'm always eager to help others engage in a more meaningful way with my own Latino and Hispanic community. So let's get to it. What is cultural competency? There are many definitions out there, but I really like this one by Dr. Udo. To be culturally competent doesn't mean you are an authority in the values and beliefs of every culture. What it means is that you have a deep respect for cultural differences and are eager to learn and are willing to accept that there are many ways of viewing the world. There's a lot to unpack here, but I do want to point out 2 things about this definition that asks you to commit to if you want to be culturally competent. The first is a commitment to continue learning. You never stop learning. And 2, that you are committed to exercising humility by accepting that your way is not the only way to view the world. There are different ways of viewing and engaging in the world, and it doesn't make them good or bad. It just simply means that it's a different perspective. So let's get into the next slide. How strong is your Hispanic and Latino cultural IQ? So before we dive into the most frequently asked questions, I want to basically manage your expectations. No one is going to walk away an expert after this 45-minute session. That's not enough time. But I am going to give you the tools and inspiration to continue your journey towards cultural competency with this population that is expected to be the largest ethnic group in Texas by mid-2020. Here's the first question. What is the difference between Hispanic and Latino? And I'm going to invite you to please engage as much as you can by trying to answer the question or asking me questions. And I also want to mention that I probably won't have time to get to all the questions during my presentation, but if you give me your email, I promise that I will personally respond to you. So, are you Hispanic or Latino? It's a question Hispanics and non-Hispanics alike have struggled with when deciding what to call this diverse community of 53 million Americans who can trace their lineage back to Latin America or to Spain. Officially, both terms are used by the U.S. government to describe this population, in addition to many other organizations like the Pew Research Center. And most people use it interchangeably, but there is a distinction. And I also want to point out that there are other definitions for Hispanic and Latino, but the one I'm about to share with you is the most widely accepted. Here we go. So, Hispanic means that you speak Spanish or can trace your lineage back to Spain. Latino means that you can trace your heritage to Latin America and that you speak a language that derives from Latin, which includes Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The term Hispanic was first used by the Roman Empire in the 1500s to describe the territory of Spain. And the US first used the term Hispanic in the 1980s census. I want to point out about the Spanish language in Spain that in Spain, the proper name for Spanish is Castellano. Castellano is the official language of Spain. The term Latino was first used by Chilean politician Francisco Bilbao in 1856 to describe countries in America that spoke that spoke languages that derived from Latin, which included Portuguese, Spanish, and French. The term he used is still used today, Latino Americano. In this slide, I want to turn your attention to the countries in the center in green. If you look at people from Argentina or Peru or any of the other countries that are here, they both can be Latino or Hispanic because these countries are in Latin America and these countries speak Spanish. If you go into the countries in blue, those countries are considered Latino, but not Hispanic. For example, Brazil, you can call a person from Brazil Latino, but not Hispanic because Brazil is in Latin America, therefore it's Latino, but it is not Hispanic because they don't speak Spanish, they speak Portuguese. On the opposite side, in yellow, we have Spain. People from Spain are Hispanic, but they're not Latino because Spain is in Europe, not in Latin America. And in red, we have some countries that are in Latino America, but are not Latino and are not Hispanic. For example, Belize. And the reason is because they don't speak a language that derives from Latin, they speak English. So Latinos are a very heterogeneous group. They have different views. And 50% of the Latino population prefers to describe themselves by the country of origin. 23% use the term Hispanic or Latino, and 23% call themselves American. This 23% that refer to themselves as American are, for the most part, people that have been in this country for generations, and they have almost completely assimilated to the American culture. And that's why they feel more comfortable referring to themselves as American. Do we use Hispanic or do we use Latino? Among Latinos, 32% prefer the term Hispanic, 15% prefer the term Latino, and 51% have no preference. Now, there are several other terms like the term Chicano that we won't have time today to get into, but I do want to get into the term Latinx because it's trending right now. A lot of people are using it. Mainly non-Hispanic people use it professionally. There was a study done by the Pew Research Center that found that 76% of the Latinos have never even heard of the term Latinx. 23% have heard it, but of the 23% that have heard it, 20% don't use it and usually don't like it. There are 3% that use the term Latinx, but before you dismiss it, because it's only 3% that actually use it, Latinx is very important. There's some members of the population that are very passionate about it because it is gender neutral. In the term Latino, to refer to male and female, we have Latino and Latina. Latinx gives people the opportunity to remain gender neutral. So what do we do? Do we do Latino? Do we use Hispanic? Or do we use Latinx? The big takeaway for this question is to honor how people want to identify. Okay, let's go into the next question. True or false? And hopefully you're able to participate by chatting and answering true or false. And I am going to try to sneak in another question for you. Who in this slide is Hispanic or Latino? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to see if you can digest and look at these individuals. First, we have Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars, his real name is Peter Hernandez. He is Puerto Rican and Filipino. Next, we have Zoe Saldana. She is of Puerto Rican and Dominican descent. Then we have Cameron Diaz. Her father is Cuban. Hulk Hogan is usually someone that people are surprised. He is Panamanian descent. Then we also have Yalitza Aparicio Martinez, who is the Oscar-nominated actress for Roma. She is an indigenous Mexican. Next, we have Alberto Fujimori, who is a former president of Peru. He is Peruvian of Japanese descent. And then Vanna White. She is, her father is Puerto Rican. And interesting enough, they can trace her ancestry to being the first mayor in Ponce, Puerto Rico. And then finally, we have Shakira, who is born in Colombia. Her dad is Colombian, and her mother is of Lebanese descent. The final takeaway for this question is don't assume you can tell if a person is Hispanic or Latino by the way they look. Hispanic is an ethnicity, not a race. And Latinos share the same language, but they have different cultures with distinct cuisines, different music, etc. It's a very diverse and interesting group of people, if I should say so myself. Next question. True or false? Hispanics have low disposable income and buying power. I hope by now you can answer this quickly by saying false. So this is a very interesting slide, and I have been presenting on Hispanic buying power probably for the last 15 years, and the number just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and much more impressive. The Hispanic buying power in the US represents almost 1.5 trillion in buying power. And according to Trading Economics, Russia represents 1.46% of the world economy, making their GDP smaller than the US Hispanic buying power. And that's true for Australia, Indonesia, Brazil, Spain, and Mexico. So the big takeaway here is no business can afford to ignore Hispanic buying power. Were all Latinos living in the US at some point considered immigrants? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about this question. And the answer is no. Hispanic culture predates any British involvement with America. And furthermore, as a result of the Texas Revolution and the Mexican-American War, we had states in the Southwest that were part of Mexico that after they became, and then after the war, they became part of the US. And I have a lot of Latino colleagues that say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. And now I want us to get into some statistics about Hispanics in Texas and in North Texas. Since 2010, we've added 2 million more Latinos in Texas. And if you look at the pie chart, the Hispanic population in Texas is at 41% currently, and it's poised to be the largest ethnic group by mid-2021. When we look at the counties here in the DFW area, Dallas County currently has 40% of its population comprised of Latinos, 30% for Tarrant County, 20% for Denton County, and just over 15% for Collin County. We have just under 2 million Hispanics here in the DFW area. About 38% of them are foreign born, and almost a fourth of the households in DFW speak Spanish. So basically, one out of every 4 homes, almost one out of every 4 homes in DFW are speaking Spanish. And I also wanted to give you some information on the top countries of origin. As you can see, Mexico by far is the highest, followed by El Salvador, and then Puerto Rico. I do want to give you some information about the majority of the population that is here in the DFW area. I've mentioned before that Latinos are a very diverse group of people. And while we have Hispanics that are middle and upper class and immigrate to this country with high levels of education and are able to integrate into our American society very quickly, the majority of the families that reside in DFW are recent immigrants that came here in search of the American dream because they were struggling in their country of origin. And as a result, they have a difficult time integrating into our community. And here's some information on some of this population, which is the population that the population of families that the Concilio works with. They come here with limited ability to speak English. They're low income. They have low levels of education. And in some cases, they are illiterate in Spanish. They have limited understanding of the American systems of healthcare, labor and human rights, education, and justice systems. I want to give you some cultural themes that are generally true, but not always. A lot of it depends on the circumstances that led them to come to the US, how long they have been here, the level of education or what country they came from, and even what country they came from, there's a difference. For example, Mexico, if they came from Mexico City, Guadalajara, Juarez, or a big metropolitan city, there's a difference if they came from a city or if they came from rural parts of Mexico. But in general, these themes are true. Family is the center of the universe. Family, for most Latinos or Hispanics, is used as an extended family, and in some cases includes friends. The needs of the family come before the needs of the individual. They bring their family with them wherever they go. So if you want to engage them, make sure that you make room for the whole family. Include the entire family in outreach and in decision making. And then the final thing I'll say about family is that there is a hierarchy, and hierarchy within a family is usually stratified based on age and gender. Next, religion. Religion is very important to this population, and about 77% of Latinos in this country are Catholic. Personalismo really means that individuals are valued more than institutions or things. You treat others with kindness and are extremely polite. Building friendly, personal connections are valued. If you are a doctor and are working with a Latino patient and you are aloof or rushed, the family may be turned off and they won't be able to make a connection with you. And that will translate into them not following your medical instructions. The best way to engage them is to connect personally and show them that you value them. Then language. I know it may sound simple, they all speak Spanish, but consider the Spanish variations, literacy levels, and the differences and nuances in the Spanish spoken in the different countries. If you are trying to reach a low-income family from El Salvador, you may need to rethink the professional Spanish from Spain in your marketing material. Male-female role. There's a lot out there about machismo and Marianismo that we don't have time to get into. But in general, the male has more freedom and authority than the female. The oldest male in the family tends to be involved in important decisions. But I don't want you to discount the females. Moms are strong, resourceful, and some may be quiet and unassuming, but they are powerful. At the Concilio, we work primarily with moms, and they are the ones that become the leaders for change in their homes. And finally, I want to talk about respeto. Respect is extremely important to most Latinos. It starts at home by the way children are taught to respect and honor their parents. And this goes into adulthood. They have high respect for authority. They bring that respect with them to their work environment, schools, and all areas of their life. They also have high respect for certain professions, like teachers. Now let's get into cultural competency. And I want to start off by showing this statement that most of us have heard and are very familiar with. Treat others as you want to be treated. But for cultural competency, I want you to think about it slightly different. Treat others as they want to be treated. And I want to go over a few examples of microaggression. The first one that a lot of us have heard is, you speak English so well. And I have no doubt that the person that says this means it as a compliment. But what it really translates into is that you're not American and you're a foreigner. And I didn't expect you to speak English well. Another example is, as a woman, I know what you go through as a racial minority. The message that is received is that your racial oppression is no different than my gender oppression. And that's not true. That's not the case. Your name is hard to pronounce. Believe you me, with somebody whose name is Florencia, I've heard this a lot. And some people have even given up on actually trying to pronounce my name correctly. And what that tells the Latino Hispanics is that culturally and linguistically, you just don't fit in here. You don't fit here. Your identity isn't important enough for me to take the time to learn how to pronounce your name. Another statement, when I look at you, I don't see color. While this comes out of good intentions, the message that is received is that you're denying a person's color, racial, ethnic experiences. And the final statement of microaggression, everyone can succeed in this society if they work hard enough. True for many people, but the message that you're telling people of color, because we have so many in Latino and African American families that are not graduating from college, that are not succeeding in schools. The message that is received is that you are lazy or incompetent and need to work harder. And you're not taking into account the hardships that they have to endure on a day-to-day basis. So now let's go into some factors that impede, societal factors that are impeding cultural competencies. Media, television, movies, shows, all of them rarely show people of color, Latinos especially. And if they do, it's usually for comic relief, or they're not shown as professionals. Self-segregation, where we worship. Sundays is the most segregated day of the week because we like to worship and hang out with people like us. The bars and restaurants, friends, the friend circles, it's usually people that look like us. And then finally, political rhetoric. There's a lot that could be said there, but the point I do want to make here is that we choose what outlets and what political messages we're going to get. And usually it's an echo of what we already believe. So my recommendation is to try to engage with other voices that are different than yours. And in this list, by no means is it inclusive. I just wanted to point out 3 of them. So what can you do? First thing you can do is to suspend judgment. Practice self-awareness. And really look at yourself. And if you're really honest with yourself, you will find that you do have prejudices. And start with that. And it's okay. It's okay. Just start your journey. Practice humility. That was part of the definition. Expand your comfort zone. Language matters. Be aware of yours. If you're unsure, think before you speak. And the final takeaway is that cultural competency is a life's journey, not a destination. So now I would like to open it up to answer some of your questions. Let me see if I can. Do we have any questions from the participants? Appears that I'm having some technical difficulties. Well, given that I'm not able to hear or see any questions, I do want to make sure that you know that I will be available to answer any other questions that you may have about cultural competencies. I wanted to make sure that I had a very brief, high-level presentation so that just to give you an entry and an opportunity for you to understand. But if you have any other questions, anything that I haven't answered, please let me know. Oh, here we go. If Hispanic is not a race, why is it often under Caucasian on forms? That is something that that has happened because the U.S. Government historically has really just divided into to differentiate us from African Americans. And since we're not African American, they have put us historically under the white category. But when you look at countries in Latin America like Panama, Peru, Colombia, Puerto Rico, Cuba, there is significant African populations. And then, of course, all of Latin America had indigenous people before the Spaniards came to America. I hope that question gets clarified. And I think we're doing better. But Latinos, now that we're going to become the majority, I think it is important for us to practice and exercise our power by making sure that that we can be identified in a way that we want to be identified. And the reality of that question as well is that we do have Latinos that are Caucasian, but not all are Caucasian. So I hope that makes sense. Next question is, what are the top needs for Latinos in the US or Dallas? There are so many needs for low-income Latino families. Right now during COVID, 53% of the COVID cases are Latino. So there is a really high need for health for our Latino families to prevent and deal with the complications of COVID. That's a huge need that we're going to have to address as a country and as a city and as a region. Also, the tech divide, the technology divide that exists and has existed for Latinos for many years now has become front and center after COVID. So those are two that I think are very important and front and center because of COVID. One that has existed and is still true during and will be after COVID is education. We really need to increase the level of graduation rates for our young people. Another question is, how can we close the wage gap for Latinos? Education, and making opportunities for people of color in the workforce. Women, the last statistic I heard for women, for women is that women, Latina women or Latinas get paid 38 cents for every dollar that a man gets paid. That's ridiculous. So we do have to close the wage gap for all Latinos, but specifically for Latinas. And how we do that is, I think we need to start mentoring them, encouraging people to graduate, get professional degrees, and when they enter the workforce, all of us have to make sure that we're nurturing and engaging them so that they can move up in their careers. You know, I can't think a question that I'm being asked is if I have any recommendations on Latino books. None come to mind right now, but I will. If you send me your email, I definitely will send you some recommendations. There are some classics, but I will send you some recommendations. I can't think of anything at the moment. Here's another question. What type of work does the Concilio do to educate the broader community about these terms and how to be more culturally competent? The Concilio started off in 1981 to do just this, to help the broader community be able to serve Latinos in a culturally sensitive way. So we will continue to have these presentations. We partner with businesses, universities, and schools, and we offer this training with more examples in both health and education for health professionals and for education and for people in the education space. So if you're interested, please give us a call and we will be happy to set up a time to go and make a presentation to basically share this message and let people know that this is a way that we can engage and work with Latinos and help them integrate into our community. So the next question is, can I talk about the Alianza DFW? Absolutely. The Alianza DFW started off as a Latino COVID response task force by just a small group of nonprofit organizations that we got together and we said, wow, what is happening? And we found out that there was a lot of misinformation and information that had not been properly translated into Spanish about COVID, about how to prevent COVID. So we got together and now we are made up of over 40 organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit. We have Univision and Telemundo. We have the city of Dallas that's involved. Dallas ISD is involved. And what we're doing is we basically are asking the hard questions on what can we do to improve the lives of Latinos through this COVID situation that has been front and center in all of our lives and has impacted Latinos and African Americans in a very disproportionate way. So we want to be that voice so that Latinos can get through this and come out at the other end with with strength and with an ability to continue thriving. Next question is your organization trying to help get out the Latino vote? We're not. We historically have never been involved in get out the vote. I'm not sure why. I think we just haven't had the resources to do it. We were involved in every decade. We have been involved in helping families come out and complete the census. But I think getting out the vote is definitely something that we've talked about, but we've never had the resources to do. But it's definitely an important endeavor that we do have several nonprofits here in the DFW and in Texas that are doing this great, important work. Next question is, how is equity different from cultural competency? It's a really good question. I don't know that I want to really get into the difference, but I think cultural competency can lead to equity. I think understanding the inequities and the challenges and the hardships and the obstacles that people of color have had to go through, and all the hoops that we have to jump through to actually get an education and have access to healthcare. Once people with privilege understand that and have the culturally competency to get it, it will lead to equity for Latinos and for African Americans and for our Asian community. I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. I hope that this triggered something in you so that you continue learning. And I definitely will find a couple of books that I will recommend. And I am really grateful for this opportunity. Thanks to all that have made the Big Bang 2020 possible. And I am honored to have been invited and to be here. And thank you all for participating. I hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much. So I think now I am going to send you to the marketplace, and we will resume and continue participating in the Big Bang. Thank you so much.